Good evening. Welcome to the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Council's candidate forum for the City Council candidates for the City of Richmond. There are 13 candidates running for this position, and the voters may vote for as many as 3. All were invited to participate, 1 declined. My name is Gosney, and I will be moderating this forum. The candidates were sent the details of this forum, but as a reminder, and so the public might understand, here is what can be expected. All candidates must remove their electronic devices from the table and are not permitted to use them during this debate. Likewise, we request that everyone in the audience please turn their electronic devices off or on mute. This debate will be video recorded, so it's important to speak into the microphone when responding. There will be a countdown timer as well as a series of red, yellow, and green lights used to keep you on track with the time remaining. When your allotted time has concluded, you will be allowed to finish your thoughts. You'll be allowed to finish your thoughts, but it should take no less than 5 seconds. No more than 5 seconds. Sorry. Try to imagine you're standing at the podium before the council where you're silenced when your time is up. For those of you on the council, it's payback time. An opening statement of 1 minute will be allowed where the candidates will be expected to, this is important, can you follow instructions? State your name, the neighborhood you reside in, and then with the remaining time, you can tell us everything that will convince us that you are the better candidate suited for this position than all the other opponents. For the opening statement, the candidate sitting to my far left will begin, which will be Vinay Play, and we'll proceed to my right. There will be but 4 questions tonight. Depending upon the time, there may be a few yes and no questions at the end. Little litmus test questions. The written questions will be handed out immediately prior to the questions being asked to allow the candidates sufficient time to review the questions. This should also eliminate the need to repeat the questions when the candidates lose their focus. Candidates will be allowed 1 minute to respond. Before each question, the candidate's name will be drawn at random to determine who will be the lead responder. After the lead responder's response, we will proceed to that candidate's immediate left for the next responder. After round 1 for each question, candidates will be allowed 1 additional minute to address the comments made by the other candidates. If a candidate attempts to respond with new information or by rehashing what they've already said, the moderator, me, I may have them refocus their comments on what the other candidates have said. Candidates are allowed to pass if they so desire. We will then move to rounds 2, 3, and 4. When the 4 questions have been addressed, each candidate will be permitted 1 minute for a closing statement going in reverse order from the opening statements. Okay, make sense? I've got some questions here somewhere. Thank you, it's at the bottom of my stack. But before we get to the questions, we'll start with some opening statements. Mr. Pimplett. By the way, the timer won't start until you open your mouth and actually speak.
Hello, thank you all for coming here. I'm Nevin Center Community Center and I live in the Northern East. My key issues are education. My happiest moment on the council was passing the Richmond Promise program, which gives up to $1,500 per year college scholarship and vocational training scholarship for our students. That is why I volunteer at Richmond High as a writer coach. I was a mentor at RPAL. I was a tutor at Lee. The other issue that is close to my heart is safety. We need to fight crime. That is why I serve on the Crime Prevention Board, where we try to improve our police-community relationship, which is the best way to fight crime. But to fight crime, we also need to hire more police officers, and that means having good finances. And
Thank you, Mr. Pimplett.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
Hello, thank you everybody for coming. I'm Carol Johnson and I currently reside in East Richmond, but I have no problem going to any part of Richmond and helping where the need is. I have been very active since 2007 and I have a proven track record of passion and commitment to serving my community in helping to prevent gun violence, helping to raise the minimum wage, protesting the unnecessary jail expansion, and helping to reduce homelessness, among other things. And if elected, I will continue in those activities and much more, including being a stronger proponent for protecting our environment and helping to strengthen Richmond's economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garcia.
Good afternoon, Diego Garcia. I currently reside in Carriage Hills, but lived 40 years in the south side of Richmond and also here in the Iron Triangle. When I first started at 19 years old, working with various communities organizations, with one being Familias Unidas, and then the neighborhood council of North Richmond. From there was a snowball effect that a whole bunch of other organizations wanted me to work with young kids. The Richmond Police Department hired me as the crime prevention specialist. The school district hired me as the Healthy Start director. Then I'm also serving the Citizens Police Review Commission at this point, and I also serve in the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'm a youth counselor. I'm also a certified game expert for 2 counties. I work closely with the district attorney's office. I'm a business owner on 23rd Street. So my community of Richmond is the privilege. Your needs highly impact me, and those are my needs as well. Thank you.
Mr. Ramirez.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Ramirez, and I go by Vicky. I was born in Salinas, California, to Mexican parents who work in the vegetation fields. They taught me about humility and hard work, and I love them very much. I have lived in Richmond for the past 20 years and attended the public schools here. Half of the time I lived at St. John's Apartments on 1st Street, and the other half at Easter Hill on the south side. In 2008, I received a full ride scholarship to UC Berkeley, and 2012 my BA in social welfare. I chose this career because I truly care for the welfare of others. I currently work at a nonprofit here in Richmond. I'm the legal immigration assistant, where we provide low-cost services to a lot of Richmond residents here. I also work at Target on Sundays. Lastly, I am a member of ACE, Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, because they give our community of color a voice, and I want to continue being that voice at the city council level. Thank you.
We thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, my fellow neighborhood council members, as well as Shields, Reed, and Parkchester Village. As mentioned, my name is Demlis Johnson III, and I became a recent resident of North and East. But I was born at Brookside Hospital, and I was raised right here in the Iron Triangle, right across the street at 511. My family is a 4th generation family of Richmond residents. My great-grandparents came up to work in the Kaiser shipyards. My grandfather owned the Savoy nightclub in North Richmond, and we've been in Richmond ever since. After graduating from Howard University, I returned back to my home community to work in the nonprofit sector, and before transitioning over to my current role at Richmond High School as a school community organizer, where I'll coordinate both city and district resources to help eliminate some of these social, academic, and economic barriers in the way of family success. And once again, my name is Demlis Johnson III, and I'm 3rd on the ballot, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
We thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Cesar Cepeda, and thank you for having me here today. I am president of the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council, so I live at Hilltop. Most of you might know me from there. And I am known around town as the candidate that gets things done, and more than that, the community leader that gets things done. When there's something that needs to get done around the community, regardless of which community it is, people call me. And I'm remembering about a year ago, we were cleaning up the park here, cleaning up the museum, trying to get it to be ready for a community event. Right? Wherever there's a need, I will be there. Wherever there is a need, I am working with the community. We're a very diverse community, whether we live by the water, or in the hills, or in the flats, wherever we are. We have to remember we're one community. Hopefully I'll be able to earn your vote this November. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here on tonight. I once lived in the Iron Triangle for 30 years. I was the vice president, then the president of the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Council. I raised my children here in this neighborhood, and I founded a nonprofit, Social Progress, Inc., and that was during the time when we had all the shootings and all the murders in Richmond of our young men we had 64 murders. And I founded Social Progress Inc. so that they would have a safe place to go in the evening time. And when you go to see the stop sign on the corner of 7th and Ripley, that is because of my work in the Iron Triangle. We had people to get ran over on that corner. We had a man to get killed on that corner. When you see the neighborhood watch sign on 7th and Ripley, that's because of my work in the Iron Triangle. And with my community, they worked with me. Everything we did together. And we also worked on the park on Elm Street. We never got it like we wanted it, but we did at one point get some equipment out there, which they took down later and redid it because they got millions of dollars to do it. But we started it.
Before you sit down, you've told us where you used to live. What neighborhood do you live in now? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Bates.
Well, I'm at home. I see so many friends out there. My neighborhood first was East Shore Park, then was Parkview, then was El Sobrante Valley, and now I reside in the Seacliff Estate. But let me just tell you something. This building that you're sitting in now, Nat Bates, one of the leaders that helped get it built here. Shields Reed, I work with Mr. Reed. We got that built. Parchester, Nevin Foster, we got that built. So really, I might as well say I'm a part of all of your communities, especially Parchester, Devens, and Shields Reed. I've been on the council now over 3 decades. I love this city. I intend to continue to work, and the most gratifying thing is working with people and assisting people. I'm honored to serve you for this length of time as your mayor, twice, vice mayor, and councilman. I look forward to serving you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Eduardo Martinez, I live in the Richmond Annex. I'm currently serving on the Richmond City Council, and I've worked in North Richmond. I've worked here at, my voice sounds different now.
You've grown up.
Yeah. Anyway, I've worked in North Richmond with a neighborhood house, and I've also worked here putting out trees. I don't know if any of you remember all the trees that we put out and gave free to neighborhood people so that they could plant them in their yards and start growing their own fruit. But I am an environmentalist. I want to make sure that our communities are healthy and safe from disasters. I also know that we have a problem with, well, I don't know if it's a problem, it's a decision we need to make about North Richmond. So we'll talk about that later.
So you know we gave you an extra 4 seconds here. Mr. Schoenthal.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Schoenthal. I live in Point Richmond, and before that was Richmond Annex. I'm going to ask you all to catch the wave with Dave, and this is why. Because I've been living in the neighborhoods now and working and being of service. I think that for too long there have been public officials who haven't been working for the people. And so I'm a servant leader. That is, I lead by faith, family, and finance, and I don't get them out of order. And what I'm seeking to do is bring people together, and I've been doing that since March. In 10 collaborative solutions workshops working on human trafficking, on illegal dumping, on housing, on employment, and bringing people together and finding that we can find ways and solutions to get things done. So with that, I'm looking to bring people together to help with neighborhood safety, good housing, jobs, and also keeping people together living in the areas that they grew up in. So with that, I'm asking you to catch the wave with Dave, stay fired up and ready to go. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm Jim Rogers. I live in Point Richmond. Remember I said next to this guy, I wonder if I should be wearing a wetsuit instead of a jacket. I'm running on my record. I think a lot of us, you're going to hear a lot of us saying we have the same goals. I'm the person who's really delivered on them. In the early 2000s, the city had a horrible problem. I led the fight for 2 tax measures, about $15 million a year, most of it paid by people who are rich people, Chevron, out of state, and it paid for desperately needed police. It let us fund the ONS, the Office of Neighborhood Safety, reopen libraries. When we had the Chevron approval in 2014, I negotiated along with Councilmember Butt, J.L. Myrick, support from Nat Bates. We got $35 million in the Richmond Promise program, a huge number of safety protection programs. I led the fight that saved Kennedy from closing, Southside's only high school. Big thing, big for the students there, big for the community. Be happy to talk to you more later, and again, thank you for coming out tonight to listen to us.
Thank you, Ms. Recinos.
Hello everyone, my name is Ada Recinos. I'm a first-generation graduate of UC Santa Cruz after saving a bunch of money by going to community college. I'm here because I'm excited to create policies with families and individuals who have worked so hard, and yet 40 hours a week continues not to be enough for us to maintain our families and to live in prosperity. And I know that because I've lived through it. Both of my parents are immigrants, sometimes having to juggle multiple jobs, going into debt in order for us to survive. I've faced a couple of evictions. I've had both of my parents lose their jobs at very difficult times. And I know that we have an opportunity to change the future for everyone. We can no longer stand behind and leave those and say, a college degree is going to get you there. We need jobs for all, we need affordable housing for all, and we need clean, safe streets for all. No one gets left behind because we've been doing that for too long, and it's exhausting to continue this fight, but I'm ready for it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. As mentioned before, this is not a forum in the traditional sense. We all just get up and talk about that and answer the questions. This is a debate. We're going to draw from a hat in just a few seconds, and then each one of you will have a chance to answer the question. Then we will start again, starting immediately to your left of the person that is the first responder. And so you get to rebut, which means you do not rehash what you've already said. You do not start bringing in new stuff. You're talking about what the others have said. You want to draw a name? Cesar Zepeda will be the first responder. Question.
Oh, yes. I thought I had to read it. Good.
Well, you do. You had almost 2 seconds now. I mean, what kind of councilman are you going to be?
Okay, I apologize, but I don't have my reading glasses. So is there any way you can just read the questions?
We are. We're going to read it, but it's available for you to read at the same time. Okay. All right. The first question is on the budget. Richmond continues to suffer from budget shortages due to various factors. What qualifications do you possess that make you better suited to address these issues relative to your fellow candidates? And what specific plan or plans do you have towards establishing a healthier long-term budget?
So some of the qualifications I have sort of first-hand experience with the city budget. At Hilltop, we have a $1 million budget for the landscaping district up there. So that has allowed me to, again, firsthand be able to touch the budget, see how messy it's been. For many years, nobody knew where that $1 million was. They don't know how it was working. They don't know where it was, how to invest it, where to put it in. I got involved. We were able to figure out that that money was everywhere else except where it was supposed to be. They were misusing it. I was able to go in and look at things differently, and we were able to cut one of the expenses and move money around to where we were able to save $80,000 in commute hours. So I have that experience from Hilltop. I have experience from what I do on a day-to-day basis. And I do insurance, I do budgets, I do...
And we thank you very much. Ms. Thompson.
Well, I can't say that I've handled a large budget, but I ran a group home. And the most I've ever handled was a budget for a year was $400,000. And we had to manage that budget in order to hire staff. We had over like 23 staff come in and out. And so that's the most I know about budget. We had the budget so that we'd be able to pay staff. And what would we do to, what was the other part? Sorry. Do to have, anyway, what I would do to make sure that the budget is balanced better is we hire too many people for one department. We have 5 people working in the rent control, and all of those people are making over $5,000 a month. So that's a lot of money for one department that's going out every month. And then if you count it up when it comes to a year, that's quite a bit. So we would have to cut down on some of that that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
It's true, the budget is #1 priority, and you can't spend money that you don't have. Running a city 168 million is no different than running your household. You cannot spend money that you don't have, and you certainly can't borrow money. What we need to do, in 40 years that I've been on the council, we have never once did an independent audit of all of our staff, which means that you should be able to come in with an auditor for a week or so and sit down and watch every employee. What are they doing? To what extent is that important to the city? Can those jobs be duplicated? Are they duplicated? Can they be combined or what? The only way we're ever going to cut staff, balance the budget, is cutting staff. Staff represent almost 80% of the budget and plus benefits. That's where the meat is, and that's where you have to look to cut staff and balance your budget.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Yes. One of the things that we need to do, and I agree with Mr. Bates on having an auditor checking to make sure that everyone is doing an adequate job. But we also need to reinstitute the council budget committee, because there's a lot of items that come to us, and they come to us days before, but it takes longer than that to actually go over the information so that we can make intelligent decisions. So I also would like to see the budgets come to us a lot sooner so we have time to examine them. And I also think we should make intelligent planning decisions. For instance, we're thinking of annexing North Richmond, which brings with it a $1 million deficit, structural deficit. So how can we balance the budget with issues like that?
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal.
So I have owned business. I have looked at payroll. I have had to write checks, and also I've had to fold in businesses. So I know what it takes to build a budget and actually operate in the budget. So one of the things that we're talking about an audit and efficiency report. So that's not just an auditor sitting over the top and looking at everybody. It's actually talking to the workers and asking them, how can we become more efficient? The finance committee was abolished. A finance committee that's with people from the community and resources in the community, that's the way to get this thing done. Need those bulbs over there. And so what we really need to do is we need to focus on so we get money through property taxes, sales taxes, and utility taxes. We're not getting landlines, as Mr. Johnson had referred to. We need to build in more sales tax. One of the ways is to get people here to Richmond, and we would have a tax holiday for each of the areas in Richmond so that people can discover Richmond and buy Richmond long term.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. We all want efficient government, and I'd like to give 2 examples of using my background as a successful small businessman who started a business from scratch, got up to about 25 employees. First one, saving our schools. Not only did I lead the fight that saved Kennedy, Grant, and Melinda, but I brought to the council a proposal which made it at no net cost. The way we did it was that we put in operational money towards keeping the schools open. The school district gave us money for an expense, which was re-roofing of the Kennedy Swim Center, which we were going to have to pay anyway. So not only did we save the schools, but thanks to my suggestion, we did it at no net cost to Richmond taxpayers. The minimum wage. We had people talking about leaving. Galaxy Desserts had a 200-person job expansion program going on. They were worried about the increase. I brought that to the council. We got an amendment for the manufacturers. They still paid a higher wage, but they didn't pay high enough to scare them off and have them leave. So that's the kind of experience nuts and bolts that I bring to the council on financial issues.
Thank you. Mr. Sina.
Hello. I was formerly the Financial Sustainability Director for a very small nonprofit, so we had to operate in a very lean manner to serve hundreds of Latino women. So I have experience prioritizing. We need to be strategic about where we place our funds. There are things that are non-negotiable, like making sure our streets get paved, maintenance, but there are things that we do have flexibility to choose. And so I invite you to create a partnership with us in the City Council and try to put on participatory budgeting, so that we can prioritize those things that are important to us. Investment in our youth, because we know that crime goes down when our young people have something to do. We also need to prioritize those services like library and community services that provide the greatest benefit to our community. And of course, we have to invest it where it matters, in education. That's education for our community members as well as education for our youth. I think that we have an opportunity to bring those to the table. Thank you.
Mr. Pimplay.
Don't worry, the timer will restart.
So the East Bay Times endorsed me as a standout, as the most financially astute candidate. Why? Because I have my qualifications include a law degree from Berkeley, so I can understand all the intricacies of all the complicated debt that the city has, and I was a software engineer, so I can analyze the numbers well. And I'll give you a simple example. The city borrowed $9 million to balance its budget in 2014. That borrowing caused a downgrade. Because of the downgrade, in 2015, we had to pay $16 million on that $9 million. We have lost over $100 million in swaps, because basically the council didn't know what it was signing on to. So we do need people who are competent. In terms of what we need to do, yes, we need to do a full comprehensive audit. Second, we need to get concessions from all our bargaining units. We have gotten them from police, fire, and management. We need to get them from SEIU also. And
thank you, sir. Thank you. Ms. Johnson, do you need the question repeated? Good.
So I am not as experienced in budget issues, but I catch on very quickly. And my main concern with the budget is that there is little or no oversight, so there needs to be an oversight commission, and we definitely need the audit and reprioritize the issues and the spending that Richmond could really benefit from, which is to reduce crime, so we need to invest in programs that will do that, programs for the youth, and also investing in services for formerly incarcerated, because that will benefit society in the long run and make us safer. And also the roads, there's a lot of road repair that needs to go on that is not happening, so those are all of the issues that we can work on.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia.
Well, starting my first youth program, my budget was $30, and I was able to feed over 60 kids on a weekly basis. That was my first one, budget right there. Secondly, when I was hired at the school district for the Head Start director, I managed to oversee $1 million budget and stretch it out to 4 years and be able to hire staff, teachers, case managers, counselors, and we were managed to be able to provide these services to all the kids with that $1 million for 4 years. I'm also a business owner, so I do timesheets, budgets, and I'm also a founder of a large soccer program that serves over 300 kids. Our budget is less than $40,000, and we challenge and we provide the services the same as other soccer programs. They have a budget of over $4 million. I also sat in the Citizens Police Review Commission and also at the Parks and Recreation Commission, where the Parks and Recreation had zero balance in their budget, and I was able to stretch it out to organize events and have over $6,000 in their budget to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez.
Hi. I am not afraid to think outside the box and will come up with creative ways to bring in revenue. I will also meet with the appropriate city departments. I am committed, I am goal-oriented, and I will meet with them as many times as I have to in order to get a better grasp of the budget and just contribute ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Well, to answer the second question first, I believe in order to create a more healthy budget, we have to increase our revenue streams because we have to have the money to allocate into budget. And there, as mentioned, there are 3 ways to increase our revenue streams, and that's through property, business, and utility use taxes. And right now, I'm really focused on business taxes, not property taxes. And that way, we can bring in more businesses that can contribute more to our tax base, and we'll have more money to budget. At the same time, my qualifications include I'm currently the chair of the Economic Development Commission here in the city of Richmond. So I am working to recruit more businesses currently. And also at Richmond High School, I sit on the school site council, and we oversee the entire budget for the Richmond High School, which is over $1 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to remind you, this is not the standard forum. It's a debate, which means now you just listened to 11 other people talk about what their plans are, what their solutions are. Here's your opportunity to rebut and comment on what they just said. We will start with Ms. Thompson. You were told in advance to be you. All right, you're allowed to pass.
I wasn't trying to convince you to call me. But anyway, I still have to stick with what I said the first time. And it's similar to what everybody else said. Go back, audit the staff, and see where we need people. See if we need that many people in one position. So that's pretty much all. We just need to see if we need the people where they are.
To your other side. Thank you. Just a reminder, too, your rebuttal is not supposed to be a rehash of what you've already said. We told you this in advance, and it was sent to you as well. Mr. Bates.
Let me acknowledge Cheryl Bader. Cheryl was here, and I'm training for a long period of time, working with a number of the young people here, and she's done a remarkable job. And I was part of the process that helped bring her here. I want to concur with my colleagues, Eduardo. We used to have a standing committee, the finance, and the what's the other committee? Safety, public safety. The Finance Committee is responsible for oversight of the budget. We've had some tremendous people there. Lundy Washington was the chair. I can name on and on. Gary Bell was the chair. That's where you have your top-notch meeting, and that's where the staff is held accountable. If they're not held accountable, they can do anything. I want to agree with Mr. Johnson. Economic development is a key for revenue, and we got to do a better job at City Hall attracting businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez. Keep in mind, rebuttals.
Yeah, a lot of the solutions that were brought up, like economic development, are solutions for the future. They're not solutions for tomorrow. So I would give some of the solution for tomorrow, but that would be new material. So just let me say that we do need the solutions for the future, and they are good solutions, which is to bring in more business, raise taxes, sales taxes. So.
And Mr. Schoenfeld.
So I think this is about the 10th candidate forum that we've had. So this is uncharted territory for us. And what I've heard over and over and over again is, and we've identified, is that we have a problem with our pensions. We talk about our budget, and by 2020, 42% of our budget will be allocated to pensions. And so what I hear is not one single answer about how that's going to be solved. I've heard, hey, I know all of the particulars of it. I understand debt swaps. I understand the construction of it. I understand Moody's will reduce it. We have to fundamentally, the only way we're going to make that change is if you have a new council. You are going to have to go against the entire grain in order to ask for concessions in order to get that pension solved. We need to meet the obligations, the promises we made, but we can't sit around and just look at the white elephant in the room. It is real. And so your new city council needs to step up and make that change.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
We heard earlier that the city may have to pay some money if we're going to go forward with letting the residents in North Richmond decide if they want to be annexed. Number one, I'm not convinced we do have to pay that money. Number two, if we do have to pay the money, it's worth it. Here's why. The people in North Richmond are literally dying at a higher rate than the people in the city of Richmond. Why? Because the county cannot provide those services. I used to be a county supervisor. I did what I could. John Joy is doing what he can. It just doesn't work. People in unincorporated North Richmond, fairly similar demographics, have a lot more crime, a lot more death, a lot more human misery. We need to step up to the plate, and as Betty Reed Soskin has written much more eloquently than I could say, we have to correct a historical injustice which occurred only because the people in that community were African American.
Ms. Rosinos.
Yes, I want to address the request to concede for pensions. The majority of our service level staff make under $50,000 a year. They're finding it more and more difficult to afford to live here. And we would be betraying them by changing it to a private system. That's ultimately what a bunch of cities and Wall Street want. They want us to sell out. They want us to get rid of the promises that we made our service level staff at the library, the folks who work here. That's what asking for concessions means. This is a racial justice issue, and this is a poor people issue. We cannot do that. We must increase the revenue. We must call on our state and federal officials to do better, because they put us in this situation in the first place by playing risky with our public pensions. We absolutely need to do that, because there are folks who have been working in the city for 20, 30 years. We're not going to let them down.
Thank you, Mr. Pimplett.
Yes, so I wish Ms. Rosinos would actually look at the salaries. Our custodians make over $60,000, junior secretaries about $70,000, senior secretaries $80,000, maintenance folks $80,000 per year. Those are salaries plus about $20,000 in healthcare and $15,000 to $20,000 in retirement, for total costs between $100,000 to $130,000. Rebutting Mr. Johnson, property taxes are super important. If we have market rate units at Hilltop, the 9,000 units that property is entitled to, that could raise $15 to $20 million per year. If we don't do that, we have to cut 100 positions. Mr. Schoenthal, actually the pensions, there isn't much we can do. Once they have been in employment for 5 years, the pensions are vested. You cannot change those programs. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson. And Mr. Garcia.
I'll pass as well.
Ms. Ramirez.
I'll pass as well.
Mr. Johnson.
Point of clarification. I talked about business taxes, not property taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Zepeda.
Can I get their time? So, about participation. I am president of the Hilltop District Homeowners and Stakeholders Association. This past season of the budget, I worked with the city for you guys to ignore our call. You increase our tax up there by 3% after we told you it was not warranted. And let alone try to increase it even more when we told you you owe Hilltop about $6 million. A month and a half after that meeting, we got a call, actually an email from Public Works saying, oh, we owe you $180,000 for last year. That was more than the 3% that was warranted. So we're going to be talking about getting the community involved. We have to listen to the community, especially those of us that all we've been doing for years is looking at our budget, looking at every single line item and saying, here's why it is not warranted to have a 3% increase, ... I went in front of the city council and they said, we're broke, we need it.
And we thank you very much. You know, this whole rebuttal thing kind of started off a little slow, but then we got into Jerry Springer territory here at the end. I'm looking forward to round two.
No, see now, there you go. See now, we came to have a good time.
Nathaniel Bates.
I hope you all saw the movie Thunderdome. 12 men enter, 1 man leaves. We're going to get it down here tonight. All right. On question number 2. Goes to Mr. Bates. City Manager, on your first day of office, what will be your most important directive to the new city manager and why?
Well, I'll tell you this, I'm going to ask that he resign. I give him an opportunity to prove himself. The first thing I would say, what are you going to do with that planning department that is a stagnation and a blockage for bringing in businesses in this city? That's right. That's the number one issue. This city has allowed the planning department to dictate what comes in and what doesn't come in. I'm going to be sending you in the mail in the next few days. There's many businesses that I've had to deal with to rectify problems of the planning department. People that say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. And that will be their testimony as to how they relate to the business community. We've got to have a business community that is friendly to businesses so that they can expand and then we can reach out and bring in new businesses. That's the number one priority.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Well, being on the city council, I've already had a chance to have conversations with our new city manager. But one of the things that I told him is that you need to review the managers that were left under your charge. Because those managers are your face. They are the ones who will tell the workers under them what kind of manager you are. I also believe that he should change some of them out as he begins to realize what sort of job is being done. That's my first conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal.
Thank you very much for the hey, where am I?
There I am. Whoa, hey.
This is a test. On.
I know. I have a bigger voice. I don't even need a microphone. So I just saw today our new city manager, Carlos Martinez, and the first thing that I said to him is, hey, we want to build more businesses. We want to find ways to develop new businesses here in Richmond. How can we streamline that process? How can we find ways to be, as we discussed, more efficient with what we have before us? So that we're not constantly cutting people, that we're not cutting services. That's what we see all over the place. We're like, well, why isn't there enough police? Well, why isn't why aren't the roads paved? It's because we don't have enough staff. So I would ask him, like I did tonight, is to find the revenue, make it happen in Richmond so that we have great jobs. And so we live in a great city. And so with that, I'm going to save some time for the rebuttal.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you very much. First thing I would say to the city manager is you do your job. Let us politicians worry about the politics of it. I want to give you 2 examples of what came up in the past. Quite a few years ago, we had a very popular police chief. There was an officer who went in and threatened a young African-American teenager a few blocks from here with planting drugs if the person would not let the officer in. This was documented on tape. What did the person get from the police chief? They got a letter of reprimand. It was outrageous. I privately told the city manager at the time, police chief goes or you go. A couple other council members did the same thing. Police chief went. When we hired Chris Magnus, he was a white, gay person from North Dakota. I told Bill Lindsay You worry about getting us the best possible police chief. And you let us politicians worry about having your back if there's pushback over him being gay or white or whatever it is. Bill Lindsay did that. He's the best police chief we've ever had in the history of Richmond.
Thank you, Ms. Rosinos.
I have also had the privilege to meet with Carlos Martinez, and fortunately I was on the search committee to appoint him, so I know that he will be as helpful, not only to you in providing the service, but he will also be as unpolitical as possible. That being said, if I get elected day one, we're going to go through my platform and we're going to get the projects that need to be implemented. I need to know that he's going to be a partner to support all of the changes that we need to see in all of our departments when it comes to providing the best service that they can. Because that's what's going to affect you the most, is who are you interacting with, or who's putting up barriers to interact with you or allow you to get what you need from city services. And so we're going to be implementing a plan to create green, high-paying jobs. We're going to be implementing an affordable housing plan for all income levels, and we're going to set metrics to those plans. We're going to set numbers, we're going to calculate how we're going to get there, and more than anything, I want our new city manager to hire a lobbyist so we can get more county and state funds as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pimplay, make sure the microphone's on.
Yeah, so the first thing I said to the city manager when I was appointed to city council, because see, the city manager's job is to actually run the city government. I asked him, how can I help you do your job better? I will say the same thing to the new city manager. The other thing I would say to him is, look, most city managers, their first job is supposed to be to count to number 4, the majority of the city council. Your responsibility is to the people in the city. You got to have that integrity. Because what I found when I was on council, one of the most frustrating things was that when even the council majority would ask the city manager, the city staff to produce a report on some controversial issue, the report was often never produced. Why? Because the council majority wouldn't like to hear the facts. That has got to change. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
So one of the first things I would talk to the city manager about is the terrible condition of the Richmond Housing Authority, which currently has no executive director since Tim Jones was fired. So if they hire someone hopefully soon, they will hopefully do a background check, because when Tim Jones was hired, no one did any check, and they didn't know that he had been fired from the Oakland Housing Authority. So he brought all of his poor work ethic and everything and all the dysfunction here to Richmond and basically ran the housing authority into the ground. So we definitely need much more oversight for our housing authority.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
I actually met Mr. Martinez just recently, about a couple of hours ago. The first thing that I would do is invite him to come out and visit our communities. In order for him to be effective, he has to know the issues that we're having. The issues in the Iron Triangle, the South Side, are much different than the ones on Marina, Point Richmond, Hilltop, and they're all different, but they're all important. So that would be one of the first things that I would ask him to do, is go out and visit the communities. Visit the community leaders. The other thing is to be able to visit our small business, mom and pop owned business. They need to know exactly what are the issues that they have in order to grow. Most of the business owners like myself, we can potentially become bigger and better if we were to know the resources that are out there. So I would challenge him to not just visit the communities, but to go out there and visit the small business as well. So those are the things that I would have him do.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez.
I would ask the city manager to focus on the social welfare of the city. For example, the roads, maintaining the roads, fixing the roads, having the streets cleaned, and also asking him to direct some department to create a project of how to get our community members more involved so that they could tell us about trash that they see. Because honestly, from where I come from, a lot of people that I encounter and I say I'm running for city council, they're like, they think that city council is unreachable, untouchable, and they don't know that you can just go and email them, call them, make an appointment with them, and tell them what you're worried about. They just don't participate. That's just my experience. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's what I would focus on. How do we get more people involved? How do we create a culture of comfortness and what's that word? Collaboration. I'm trying to say it in Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Well, one of the first things that I would ask of the new city manager is to take me through his 6-month, 12-month, 3-year, and 5-year plan. Because I want to know, I'm pretty sure he came with some good ideas. He came from an area that has seen a lot of economic boom, and I really feel as though he has some experience to bring. Then once we're done going over his plans for Richmond, I would like to put him in a car with me and take him on a real Rooted in Richmond tour to meet people like Ms. Mason, Ms. Bonnie, small business owners who can really tell them the ins and outs of our city. I really feel as though too many times we have individuals who don't know Richmond come to Richmond and assume power positions and tell us what's best for us. And I promise you, once I'm on city council, that's going to cease. Because all of this things for us, without us, we know what's best for you. This patriarchal style of governing is coming to an end. So I'm here to put everybody up on notice who recently moved to Richmond and think they're going to run the show. We're not going anywhere. Thank you.
Mr. Zepeda.
So, I know that I'm going to be elected with 2 other individuals here that are going to have some really strong points for the city manager, but something that wasn't brought up yet is a hospital. We need another hospital that's going to be for our community, because in case of an emergency, if we have a big earthquake, and everyone's waiting for that big earthquake, and that is the reason why the other hospital, or one of the reasons why the other hospital closed, because in case of an earthquake, it would not be able to sustain us. So now, in case of an earthquake, we got nowhere to go. So we need a hospital that will be able to treat our community in case of an emergency, whether it be whatever kind of emergency can happen, an earthquake, Chevron, anything else that could be happening. A hospital is one of the top priorities to make sure that they have those conversations, and we bring one back to Richmond and our community. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. I understand what gentleman is speaking of, because we've gone through that many times when we have new people come in and they want to tell us how to run everything. They come to our community and tell us how things should go. But I was going to say that the first thing I would ask the city manager is he going to find out about the controlling the spending in the city of Richmond? If you go to the council meeting, you'll see that there's so much money being spent out for different things, consultants, get new attorneys, when we already have 2 or 3 city attorneys. So I want to find out if he's going to cut some of that. And if he's going to find out if staff is needed in the positions that they're in, and if they're not needed there, then place them. I'm not saying when I say that there's too many people in departments, I'm not saying fire nobody or get rid of nobody. I'm just saying find out where they're needed, where they can do the best job. Thank you.
Great. Back to the Jerry Springer Show. Mr. Martinez, rebuttal time.
I have nothing.
Mr. Schoenfeld.
Jerry Springer time. That's very apropos. Look, we live in a major metropolitan city. The city manager is but one person. We have to work together. We have to get each other in the room, even if we don't disagree, even if we don't agree. And frankly, most times we don't agree. But I do know something, is that we can get things done. And so hiring a city manager and expecting that person to be the person to have all of the ideas, the knowledge is here. The knowledge is right here in this room. So get us in the room, let's work it out through a collaborative solutions process to figure out what it is that we want to do. So that it's not a top-down approach, it comes from the community on up. much like I see Tootie Mayor in the audience from Pogo Park. It's from the ground up. It's from the people. That's how you build great, lasting ideas. So we can't just expect one person to have all the ideas. We have to work together to find ideas.
Mr. Rogers, you have a rebuttal.
Thank you. We need to understand the city manager is supposed to implement policy. When you say that the city manager is just going to take a problem and solve it, you're dreaming. You need to have the money. If you don't have the money, it's just politicians flapping our gums. I want to give you an example. We had a crisis when we were closing fire departments, libraries, cutting police officers. I spearheaded the effort that passed the tax, and we brought those people back. When we had the pothole repair issue, and they're bad now, they used to be a lot worse, I brought to the council the idea that we would take redevelopment money and we doubled the pothole repair budget. Redevelopment went away eventually, but it made a difference in the meantime. So I don't agree with the idea that our job is just to say, hey, city manager, you figure it out. It's up to us as elected officials working with the community to get the money and then to have the city manager spend that money wisely.
Thank you, Ms. Racinos.
Thank you. I do think that, yes, a majority will get things done, but there are certain things that the city needs to get done implementing equity in our planning department that are just the right thing to do. And I do believe that a city manager that has that passion, that plan to do that for our services, will be able to implement it, because ultimately they're managing and creating a culture of service. If they understand that we want equity in the city, we want things to change, we want more accessibility, it has to come from the city manager, who has to then influence his staff, his supervisors, his department heads to implement that and get the service level folks excited about working there again. Because that's a little bit of what's been happening in this influx. So I do believe that, yes, a majority will have greater influence, but an individual city council member can make long-lasting change that will work for generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pimplay.
Yeah, so actual rebuttal time again. So first, Mr. Johnson, I was pointing out that he was ignoring property taxes, which could, if he handled it properly, fetch us $15 to $20 million. But for this round, Mr. Martinez, he talked about certain managers. Well, it's illegal for council members to actually interfere in any kind of personnel decision. That's a big red flag. Ms. Racinos, she talked about affordable housing and stuff like that. Well, the way affordable housing works is you get tax credits. The developer gets tax credits from California State. Those tax credits can just be manufactured by the city manager. You know, so it's not really in the city manager's hands much. In terms of in-lieu fees also, in most of the places in the cities, market rate housing is not really even feasible. It's only feasible in places like the Point and by the Bay Shore. So, you know, this thing about, let's make a plan for affordable housing. It's fine to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
So, okay, I don't have a rebuttal for anyone here per se, but I'm just really upset about the fact that they hired a city manager, somebody from East Palo Alto, when there were qualified applicants here locally. That's a big mistake.
Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia.
I'll pass.
Ms. Ramirez.
I'll pass as well.
Mr. Johnson.
Because once again, that's another point of order. I've never ignored property tax. If you visit my website or if you care to read the back of my palm card, I'm interested in exploring all ways of expanding revenue streams here in the city of Richmond. Thank you.
Mr. Zepeda.
Man, this is fun.
Excuse me, again tomorrow. So, I know my time is running out, but all I'm going to say is there was a few individuals here who pushed for Measure U. 2014, it's a new tax that was sold to all of us. And a lot of people bought it because it told you it was going to repair your potholes, it was going to fix your parks, it was going to fix, make it better, and the only hole it fixed or tried to fix was the budget. because they did not care to actually work on the budget to make it better. Then it'll tax you. And I was one of the only people out there telling people, don't vote for Measure U. It's not what you think. And then you saw that once they passed it, and then they tried to figure out, and the community came out and they said, you said this, and they're like, oh, now we got to do kind of, but not really, you'll forget about it in a month or two. And that's what they did. So pay attention to who pushed that, because they're going to do it again. They were elected in 2014.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, I pass.
And Mr. Bates.
I've heard a lot today. One thing I would like for this council candidate is to read the charter. The charter mandates what we can do and what we cannot do. Mr. Cepeda's talked about a hospital. That is not the germane of the city council. That is more of a county function. There's nowhere in the charter that mandates that we deal with hospitals. In reference to the city manager. The city manager has full authority over all the staff, with the exception of 4. Himself, obviously, the city clerk, the city attorney, and we at one time had a police commissioner that was assigned to the council. That's the only 4 people that we control. We have to work with the city manager. We set policy, he implement policy. We don't dictate to him, but we, through a policy measure of the full council, tell him what should and should not be done.
Thank you very much. Oops. Trying to say that. Draw another name from the hat.
Dennis Johnson.
Mr. Dennis Johnson will be the next responder. We're going to talk a little bit about public safety. I understand that's a problem some places. The Iron Triangle continues to be disproportionately, adversely impacted by crime. What policies do you think have failed and why? And on the flip side, what policies do you think have succeeded and why?
As mentioned, I grew up here in the Iron Triangle. This is actually the basketball court where I witnessed my first murder. It wasn't the last. But what I really feel is though the policies that have failed here in the city of Richmond is the policies of deindustrialization and not investing enough in our communities. Which is why I really feel is in order to really increase public safety here in the city of Richmond, specifically here in neighborhoods like the Iron Triangle, we have to increase services such as mental health services, trauma recovery services, and we have to make sure that we have a fully staffed police department. We can't have what we currently have, which is 20 officers out on leave and less than 10 officers at nighttime. We need a fully staffed police force, and then at the same time, we need to make sure that they have the resources to implement a 21st century community policing department. And that includes better training and non-lethal resources. And that's how we can improve more public safety here in the city of Richmond. Thank you.
Mr. Cepeda.
So the elected officials stopped listening to the community. I know it's not a policy, but it's an action that was created because black and brown people, we tend to show up less to vote. So when it comes time to giving resources, they don't always look at our communities. We have to start making sure that we hold our elected accountable, that they work for everyone in the community, that they come in and they invest as much money in these areas, not just in the already rich areas. McDonald Avenue has so much potential. The museum has a lot of potential. This park has a lot of potential. But they drive by it, or they don't even come to it. We have to make sure that we hold them accountable. And one of the ways is through district elections.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Okay. Like I said before, I lived in Iron Triangle for over 30 years. And during that time, we had a lot of crime and a lot of murders in Iron Triangle. And at that time, they hired Chief Lansdowne, and I sat on that committee that made the policy for community policing. And as I've said, I think that he had the best community policing program when he came into office. We had police officers riding through the neighborhood on bicycles. We had them walking through the neighborhood, and I said before, my children would go out to the gate and wave at them. The officer that walked our block was named Steve. And I think when the new police chief came in, I knew things was going to start happening because he changed the community policing, and it was never the same since. And I think that we need to fully staff our police department, and it should be fully staffed at all times. And also we should have our fire department, because those are the people we're going to call on when we need them.
Thank you. A reminder to all the candidates, this is a two-part question that basically is asking you what worked and what didn't work. Not really hearing the answers to those questions. Mr. Bates.
The Iron Triangle, North Richmond, the South Side, especially around East Shore Park, have been hot spots. Now we got a hot spot on the 23rd Street merchants, where prostitution, theft, breaking into cars. That has been a problem. And I'll tell you, the police department have supposedly utilized their workforce to concentrate on these areas, to the displacement of, say, El Soprano and some of the other areas. So I don't know what works and what doesn't work. I'm not a police chief. All I can do is listen to what they tell us, and they're the professionals in this area. And if they say that they're trying to do this or that to control the problem, I have to trust them. I don't have an answer, and I don't think anybody up here has an answer. I don't know what's happened in the past, and I can't project. I will work with the chief to try to improve the quality, but that's the extent that we can do as council people.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
As we all know, relationships create community, and community policing depends on police having relationships with the community. One of the problems that Richmond has is the amount of acreage that the police have to cover. In some areas of police, it takes the police half an hour to get from one extreme of their beat to the other extreme of their beat, which makes it difficult to create the kind of community policing that we need. I have proposed that we have the police cadets that we have be graduated to a police academy that the city would pay for, so that upon graduation they would become police officers, so that we have homegrown police in the city of Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenfeld.
So part of the reason why there is a problem with across the city, not just in the Iron Triangle, across the city, is because people know that we do not have enough police officers. We want our police officers to do community policing, that is, get out of their cars and work with the community. They cannot do that right now because they are 20 staff members down. We need to restaff to the staffing level that meets our service needs so that they can have the mental acuity to be able to work properly. They're working 10 hours on, 8 hours off, and 6 hours back on. And we're expecting them to be perfect shot, be perfect acuity, and then also work in the community. So we need to get it to a staffing level that supports that. When I look at the Iron Triangle, I see a beautiful place, but I also see the Barrier Rescue Mission, I see a recycling center, and I see a liquor store in proximity. We need to find ways to help these people get jobs so that they can work that dignity and work.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. We're all going to tell you we're upset about being down 20 police officers. But think about it. If we had not passed Measure U, how many would we be down now? 30, 40, 50? I don't know. Now, there's the urban legend that Measure U was sold as a pothole repair only measure. The city attorney analysis mentioned 5 different things, one of which was pothole repair. I ran the campaign for it, raised money, it passed narrowly. 5 different themes in that campaign that I sent out. The ballot argument, 5 different themes. So when people say that it was sold as only pothole repair, they need to go back and look at the original documents. And when people try to say that we did bait and switch, the reality is that the city has a lot of important services it provides. If we didn't have that Measure U money, where is job training? Where is the police force? Where are the libraries? They're all down the toilet.
Thank you, Mr. Sinos.
What works is community policing, our beats, and cops walking the beats. What we can say is adding cops alone is not going to stop crime. We need to tackle that prevention. So that's opportunity for youth, young men. Like Richmond Bill says, nothing stops a bullet like a career. Opportunity is very important. If we do want to add more police to our force, we have to be strategic. Let's prioritize a couple of beats that need a little extra support and be intentional about building long-lasting community relations so that it doesn't just become another opportunity to incarcerate young men of color. We need to be intentional. We need to make sure that our officers are homegrown as much as possible, that they understand the culture here and the culture of where they work, that they're trying to work to build relationships with folks and young people, because I know that many folks tell me that continues to be a challenge to this day. Despite the fact that we have community policing, we still have a ways to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinplay.
Yeah, so what failed? The abandonment of community policing between Commissioner Lansdowne's service and when Chris Magnus came in. That period in the early 2000s saw a doubling of the homicide rate. What is successful, of course, community policing. That is why I serve on the Crime Prevention Board, because we build better police-community relations. We have the Office of Neighborhood Services that works with at-risk people. You know, you, us, you know, my wife and I, we were mentors at RPAL. RPAL identifies high-risk youth and pairs them up with adult mentors. That works great. In terms of catching people, you know, these cell phone surveillance, that has helped out a lot. The other thing that helps out is when there's a crime, police know that there's going to be revenge murders, so they do a big call-in to make sure that that doesn't happen and the cycle is broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Okay. One of the things that definitely was a huge part of the solution was Richmond ceasefire, and I was personally involved with that, and I have been since 2011. So what we did was we walked regularly every Friday night in different parts of Richmond to just spread the message that we wanted people to be alive and free. And we also met regularly with people who were at risk of being shot or shooting. So we offered them resources. But whatever it was, job training or education, we just gave them the clear message that we wanted the violence to stop. And it worked because it involved everybody, not just the police. It involved concerned citizens, faith leaders, even the parole and probation department and the police department. So after working with them for years and years, which it did work because the gun violence went down 60 to 70%. And unfortunately it's going back up, but we will continue to come up with creative solutions to strengthen neighborhood watch and possibly keep the churches engaged. So things that don't work is leaving it all up to the police and also just leaving formerly incarcerated people out of the solution.
Mr. Garcia.
What failed? I think a little bit back before policies. I think what failed is getting the community involved to be able to elect violence prevention experts in our council. What happened is because of the budget cuts with police, recreation department, public works, and of course our mental health programs, what failed was the direct services to our community. The ones that are being more effective, of course, is the ones who don't vote. We need to get the community involved to be able to elect those violence prevention experts to be able to make that change and not rely on other people to come in and tell us what to do. The direct services that I'm talking about is actually doing the outreach work, because there are resources out there. But when we don't have that outreach to be able to give people the voice and be able to give the people the information, how could they get that service to them? The one thing that did work was the... Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ramirez.
Hi, what I believe has worked is the Office of Neighborhood Safety, the ceasefire marches, and neighborhood watches. I don't have anything specific that I would say does not work, but what I think is we need holistic approaches, not just policing. We need resources, and we also need the police officers to incorporate mental health in their training so that they could distinguish when it's a mental health issue in the community or when it's not. And that's one of my biggest concerns. Thank you.
Rebuttal time. Since Mr. Johnson started, we will start to his left, Mr. Zepeda.
So we talked about, or we heard from what can work and what we want to do better. But we also have to pay attention that, as it was mentioned, we have a lot of acreage. The city is very large. That is not a reason why you cut your police force. Right now, that is shooting us in the foot. Hilltop, for example, is getting about 7 to 10 car break-ins within the shopping area. That is making less people want to come in to give us their money, which is having this cycle go the wrong direction. As people keep talking about the crime that's going up in Richmond, they're going to be leaving. And this revenue that we're trying to get back in is not going to come in. So we're going to the wrong direction. We want to put it back to the right cycle. If we have more space, we're going to need more services, not less. We have to figure out more money to come in.
Thank you. Keep in mind, rebut what the other people have said. Yes, John Thompson. Mr. Bates.
I've heard a lot of statements. Everything boils down to money. Are you willing to raise taxes on yourselves to afford these services? Dan Bogan had a beautiful program, Office of Neighborhood Safety. That program has been slashed almost in half. That means that we don't have that program any longer. We had community policing. We started out with 212 police officers initially when I was on the council. Now it's down to 178, 20 on field position, 20 people out sick. We don't have the officers out there to even get involved in community policing. These people are so busy going and coming and working overtime. It's totally unsatisfactory. We simply don't have the resources. Until you get the financial resources, many of these programs, mental health, whatever you want to call it, are going to be by the wayside.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, we can only do what we can do when we have the money. So the money is a major problem. But there's one thing that we have plenty of, and that is community members. And it's our responsibility as community members to... Thank you.
No, sorry.
No.
Keep talking.
Yeah, so it's our responsibility as community members to work with increasing our relationships with the policemen and looking out for each other. Neighborhood watch programs help. Speaking up when you see things going on helps. So we need to be here to help each other. We need to be here to help the police do their job. And as a city council person, well, as city council, as community members, we will all work towards making our community work together for our common safety.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenfeld.
Yeah, so I heard a comment earlier from the gentleman to the left of me here about Measure U. I'm still struck how Measure U got us more police officers. We're down 20 police officers, and remind us here that the 20 police officers that are down If we put them on mandatory overtime, they are not, we're going to burn them out. We're going to lose more police officers. So the money that we're talking about is there. We need to hire them. I think that we ought to get together and recruit. The people ought to recruit, ought to say, hey, we are the community. We want to find other police officers like the one that I met, which was Officer President. And yes, that's her name. She came from Texas. She came to Richmond because we have a community policing program. That's the kind of police officers we should seek out. Not sit around and go, okay, well, we've passed some measure and we've got money for it. What do we have right now? And then go find those people to work in this great city.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
If you want to hear easy platitudes, if you want to hear people suggest that serious issues like the disproportionate crime in this neighborhood can be addressed easily, then vote for somebody else. Don't vote for me. Taxes are difficult politically. When I was running for re-election, I ran the Measure U campaign. It passed narrowly. The comment is made that we haven't solved the police officer problem because of Measure U. That's true. But think about it. There's so much money in the budget. If we didn't have Measure U money, how many cops go out the door? I understand the attraction of staying away from hard issues, but I think my job as a council member is to engage the community to talk about real issues that really matter, and taxes one. When we look at the taxes, let's stay away from the homeowners who are Richmond folks. Let's go after the taxes, where again, people who are rich people, out-of-town people, big businesses, pay most of them. That is the taxes that I supported.
Thank you, Ms. Marcinos.
We can recommend all day and night that the chief of police hires more staff. It is ultimately his decision that comes down from our city manager. So if we do want to see that influence happen, we have to create policy only. So a candidate who says, I promise you we're going to restore 20 police officers, can't really guarantee that because they won't be making that decision. And I believe that our chief has certain reasons for why he's made the decisions. I do think that he needs to be put in the direction to be more strategic about staffing levels. But ultimately, what we get to decide is what portion of the budget is going to get used and how. So I think that there's been a couple of myths out there. Ourselves as individuals will not be able to bring more police officers, but we will be able to make those strategic policies that afford us to feel safer. And that's what I'm committed to.
Thank you, Mr. Pimplet.
Yeah, so some folks here have suggested that, maybe more police or an emphasis on policing is not important. Well, a lot of people, when they think of policing, they think about just police who patrol the neighborhoods. A really important fact for us is that our homicide detection rate is very low. And this actually contributes to more homicides because many people, if you talk with the ONS folks, they will tell you that part of why the cycle of revenge killings continues is because people simply do not have the faith that police are going to be able to catch the perpetrators, catch the murderers. So they take the law into their own hands. So, this detective work is really important. The other thing is also that it's important to understand that a lot of our gang issues are really more like one neighborhood against another neighborhood. That thing has got to change. It's not always linked to drugs or opportunities like it often is. It really is a different problem. We need to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
I pass.
Mr. Garcia?
Respectfully pass.
Ms. Ramirez?
I pass as well.
A lot of passing going on. Mr. Johnson?
I would like to refute the idea that elected leaders play no role in reducing gun violence here in the city of Richmond. I grew up here in Central Richmond. I grew up here in Central Richmond, where the beef between Central, North, and South is real. And not once have I seen elected officials come, because I was that at-risk youth, young black man growing up on 5th and Nevin. I've never seen leadership come down to the Iron Triangle. I've never seen them spend a day in our neighborhood unless it was a forum or a debate or an opportunity to be seen. So the first thing we need are elected officials who's willing to do more than lean on a third party to get their job done. That's the first thing we need. The second thing we need is to get rid of these Band-Aid solutions and get to the root causes of these issues. And the only way we can do that as leaders, is by putting our feet, our own feet, not the police, not ONS, not ceasefire, our own feet in the street. And talking to those individuals. Because until then, we're talking above them and not to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know I promised you 4 questions, but we've got a little bit of a timing problem. Here is a quick...
For real, because y'all, they don't care. They want our votes. They don't want to hear us. They don't want to engage us. This is the problem. People come here and they talk pretty every time.
Because of the timing issue, we don't have time on our 4th question to have a rebuttal. Sorry.
You can use it.
All right. But, so we're going to go with the 4th question, and to think about timing, we may have a couple of lightning round of a yes or no question before our closing statements. Your 4th question. We're going to draw some names first. Don't ask me to do it. I'm not.
Eduardo Martinez.
Eduardo Martinez. Okay. Homelessness. The Iron Triangle is home to 2 major nonprofits that serve Richmond's homeless communities, Richmond Rescue Mission and GRIP. What is your specific plan to address Richmond's homelessness problem, which is disproportionately impacting neighborhoods like the Iron Triangle?
Well, the homelessness problem is not just a Richmond problem, it's a Bay Area problem. If you've been to San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley or Albany, you will see tons of homeless people without means of support. So I've been working with Richmond. I've been working with the homeless task force that's composed of people from San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, and Richmond, and we're trying to figure out a regional solution to the problem of homelessness. Along with the mayor, I supported Measure T, which will be a tax on vacant houses and lots, which will provide money for abatement and for homelessness. So money is needed to do this, and we were also thinking of figuring out a way to use some of the vacant lots in lieu of fees, using the vacant lots for homeless encampments that would be regulated.
Mr. Schoenthal.
So I'm part of the homeless task force here in Richmond. First thing that we should do is set up warming centers so that people are assessed as they come in. So homelessness is not a crime. It is an experience, right? So that we can assess, is it mental health services do they need? Do they need food? Do they need shelter? Do they need to have these things so that it's a person, it's not just this monolithic group of people, and navigate them through. So there could be things that we could offset right now. Tiny home villages, parks where they can park in place and have overnight stay. You know, look, in this city, a tiny home on wheels is looked at an RV, so it can't park there all the time. So why not we change the ordinance so they can park in place? It's a long-term thing, so we need to give work. They got to work, so we've got to find ways to give work. There's dignity in work, and so there are programs we can assist them with through a nonprofit in order to carry the insurance on it, so that they can work and work in place. Thank you. Those lights are crazy.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. I think here again, I want to go back to what Mr. Bates said earlier. It does come down to money. We can have cool ideas about the homeless problem. If we don't have the money, they're just ideas. They're not helping anybody. We have the opportunity to vote this November for a tax on vacant lots. It's good both because of the money that we can then use working with the community to figure out plans to deal with the homeless problem. It's also good because it's going to encourage people to actually develop those lots, not to have them be trash-strewn, unproductive pieces of dirt sitting there, but to actually encourage them financially to make use of them, to put buildings there, homes, businesses, whatever it is. The last thing is that we need to remember that the city of Richmond cannot deal with a lot of the root causes of the homeless problem. There's been a shredding of the social safety net done at the federal level. Until that happens, a lot of people will be suffering as a result of it.
Thank you, Ms. Rosinos.
We need to vote yes on T and yes on Propositions 1 and 2 that are going to help us have the state and local funding to address this issue. We need to meet people where they are, and that quite literally means asking the homeless community, what do you need today? We haven't necessarily been addressing this as we should, as a triage. Unfortunately, due to the Brown Act, I'm not on the homeless task force. But one thing that I really care about is asking folks what ideas they have to solve their own issues. They are going to have the solutions. They're going to tell us, a camp is going to work for me, but you know what? I'm scared and I need a home. And I need somewhere permanent to be. I need mental health resources. I need access to healthy food. I need support for my kids. And then we need to be able to provide that, which is why those funding sources are so important, because we can't do anything without them. And once we do have them, we'll be able to create a pathway for people to get from homelessness to housed to thriving. We need to be able to get our community members there, because statistically we know that the people who are homeless here, our community members have been here for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pimplay.
Yeah, so I agree with Eduardo Martinez and Jim Rogers who say that this is basically a regional problem. And so one of the big things we can do is elect Gavin Newsom, because he has promised to have a homelessness czar, a cabinet level position on homelessness. And having this is really important, because cities, it doesn't make sense for cities to be dealing with these things on their own. Having said which, one of the things we can do is we can have navigation centers. We can also organize the homeless into green teams, so they can actually do some work in exchange for getting the support, which will also later help them to get a job. So I've been also part of an informal working group on homelessness to figure out what programs would be best for the $7.2 million that the county is going to have to deal with homeless issues. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson.
Okay, so some things that we can definitely do is work together with the county officials to provide mental health services and substance abuse treatment in the community, so that people don't have to go to jail to get the help they need. And we also need to support and vote for Proposition 10 and Measure T, all these other measures, 1 and 2, because you have all the homeless people, a few of them are not mentally ill or they're not addicted, but they're, the working homeless, where they have jobs but they don't make enough to pay rent anywhere. But if they remain homeless and get no help, then they may very well be mentally ill or develop an addiction.
Mr. Garcia.
For the past 12 years, I organized a food drive that feed over 400 people and families. And this is the way that we can actually meet with the homeless population and community to be able to understand what are their needs. There are different levels of needs that they are having in this community. Not just because they don't have a roof over their head, mean that they are homeless. We also have families who are living in conditions where they are living in a garage. They're homeless as well too. But if we can duplicate the services that GRIP and the rescue mission is already doing and put them in different places in our community, that's how we're going to be able to assist more people. We talked to some of the homeless people where I employ them or even talk to them, just sit down and have lunch with them. And what they tell me is, Diego, we just need a place so we can shower, that we can connect our phone, that we can have an address to be able to get some correspondence. We need to be able to do the outreach to talk to them directly and find out exactly what is it that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you. Hi. I don't have a specific plan since the city and the county have been working on this for like the past 5 years. What I do want to get behind is the idea of tiny houses and the holistic social services that they have been discussing. Also, there is funding from the Homeless Emergency Aid Program coming from the county, and that's happening now. They're deciding where that money should go, and you guys should look it up if that's what you're passionate about, if it's homelessness, and participate in that. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Well, I think in order to address homelessness, we have to approach it with a collaborative approach. Homelessness doesn't exist in a Richmond bubble, so we can't try to solve it in Richmond, in Richmond only. And with that, we have to be willing to work with institutions such as the Richmond Rescue Mission, who has plans to rebuild their facility on McDonald to include more women and children. We have to be willing to work with John Joya's office, who recently received money to get micropads, which are shipping crates that have been converted into housing, and they stack them on top of each other with wraparound services at the bottom, which are 100% free. And then we also have to work with faith-based organizations, churches, such as Victory Outreach, St. John's Baptist Church, even Living Waters, the church that I attend. Most churches have a mandate to do more public service, especially around the homeless. And then also working with our surrounding cities in the area, so that way we're attacking it with a regional approach. And that's how I feel as though we can really begin to solve the homeless issue here in Richmond and throughout the region. Thank you.
Mr. Zabeda.
So I've been very lucky to be able to work with both RIP and across the street here at the Rescue Mission, and being able to talk to the individuals there. If we need more housing, because people are homeless, we need to build more housing. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's sort of logic. We need to figure out how to build more housing, how to talk to developers, which I've already started doing. Actually, one of them is thinking about building just about 2 blocks over, and he wants to make sure that he builds affordable housing, Section 8 housing. So being able to have these conversations, no one's talking about this. How do you bring in more individuals to invest in the city of Richmond so we have that housing that we need? I sat on the Economic Opportunity Council for the county, and from there we were able to see all the services that are needed throughout the county, because it's not just Richmond, but we have to treat this as a nationwide. Kamala Harris has a bill, hopefully it passes, where they'll be able to put funding towards people that need assistance.
Thank you, sir.
In paying their bills.
Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Measure T, which will be on the ballot, I think we should vote yes for that, because it will not only help the homeless, but it will also help our school, West Country Cross School District. There's another program also that I went to a meeting for, and they give money for homeless. They will give you grant. We just have to be there and try to get some of the money. They will give you a grant that can build a facility for the homeless. Something else. But anyway, the way I think we should solve the problem is to build tiny houses. And Mayor Butt is the first person that I heard to mention that. We should build tiny houses on vacant lots. They have houses that they've already built and there's no one in those houses. We should put homeless people in those houses to get them off the street, because the tents are getting more and more. If you go down the street where GRIP is located, you'll see that they're not getting smaller, but they're growing. So we need to take these vacant lots, these vacant properties, and put homeless people in them.
Thank you, Mr. Bates.
I go further and say that homeless is a national problem, not just only here in the Bay Area. What's happening is that the cold weather on the East Coast are forcing individuals to the West Coast, where the weather is much nicer and the climate is greater. The one other problem that we have with homeless is that, I'm talking to Mayor Schaaf and others, is that they do have shelters for homeless people. But a lot of them don't want to go in these shelters because there are restrictions. You can't bring in drugs. You can't bring in alcohol. Some people have pets that you can't bring in pets. So while we're looking at and recognizing the problem, there are some other serious problems that we have to address as well. And I commend the Richmond Rescue Mission, the RIP, and the churches and everyone else. It's a problem that has to be solved by all of us and not by our municipality. We simply do not have the resources to deal with it. And we collectively can assist and give support.
Thank you. We're going to give you a couple of questions that are really pretty much a yes or no type of thing. Okay, I'm going to do this by a show of hands. I need you, when I ask the question, long enough for me to scan back and forth to film you and put you on video. Get a little record on this. Yeah. Okay. You're going to have one of three responses. Yes, no, decline to state.
Yes, no.
I told, say, when I ask you the question, do you support it? Yes, you put your hand up. When I ask you, do you not support it? You put your hand up. Decline to state, you put your hand up. Okay. This is a test. You all right? Are you qualified to be on the city council? Okay. All right. Measure T is the empty lot measure. Do you support it? Yeah, put your hand up. Do you not support it? Hand up. Decline to state. Second question. Again, three responses. Measure H, the tax on property transfers. Do you support it? Do you not support it? Decline to state. Last question. This is a little controversial. Proposition 10, Costa-Hawkins. Do you support? Hands up. No fair jumping out of your seat. Do not support it. And decline to state. Okay. Now, we're going to go into some closing statements. You've got 1 minute apiece. We're going to start at the other end of the table with Ms. Racinas.
So once again, my name is Ada Recinos. I'm a proud daughter of immigrants. It's the reason why I feel like I need to do this work. I think that we can continue to do better. I think that our elders should be able to retire with dignity and full benefits like they were promised. I also think that we need to provide more opportunities for our youth. And lastly, what I did want to add is that yes, our service workers make less than $50,000 because some of them are temporary workers and they only get to work for 3 months. Then they have to take 3 months off. And I don't think that that's the way that we should be running the city anymore. If we're going to employ someone, we need to employ them with full benefits. Because that's the only way to do things right. We need to lead by example. I want to make sure that I listen to all of you. I think it's very important that we sometimes will have disagreements, but that'll get us the best outcome possible is when we have those conversations. And I know that that's factual because I've been able to work with a lot of working moms, a lot of working single moms who actually have some of the best ideas about how we can do policies different. Why? Because they have experience with the struggle. And that's what I want to bring, is that experience of the average person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Sorry, the microphone's not working.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We appreciate those of you hanging in with us till the end. I'm running on my record. I'm running as a progressive. I'm running as somebody who's done the hard work, worked with the community, done the organizing, and gotten things done for the parts of Richmond that are often forgotten about. We took on the cigarette and alcohol billboards, won on that, working with people from the community, people like Myrtle Braxton, who's endorsed me, like Tony Thurman, who's endorsed me. We had the fight to save our schools, won that one also, working with people like Irma Anderson, who has endorsed me. We have the opportunity to do more, and what we need is leadership that doesn't just have good ideas and sound good, but has been in the trenches and has proven that we know how to get things done. I'm one of those people, and I hope I get your support on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal.
So after the last election, we realized that I had to make a change. We had to be the change that we sought in the world. And I have a 12-year-old daughter, soon to be 13 in November. And if I didn't step forward and make that change to pull down the barriers that have been created by those before me, I would be doing nothing. I would be showing for her that I haven't done anything. I'm running as a public service, a servant that is somebody who is for the people, not for some organization, some corporation. It's for you. That's the only reason why I'm running, because it's certainly not about the money. Now, as you go down the ballot, and you first, I'm sure, going to check off Mr. Johnson, you can also check off my name. And here's why. Because I've been working in the community, hard at work, raising money for local nonprofits, and also bringing community members together. That's why I'm uniquely qualified to reach across the aisle and work with people, because I see them first with respect and love and compassion. And I know we can get great things done, fired up and ready to go.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes, my name is Eduardo Martinez. I'm running for Richmond City Council along with Ada Recinos and Melvin Rose for mayor. We're running as a team because we know we can support each other. We have the similar values. I am running for Richmond. I've worked for 4 years representing residents. I have an open door policy. On my card, you have my cell number. You can call me anytime about any matters, and I will meet with you. In fact, I've met with many residents here in the Iron Triangle to deal with issues of abatement. I've also worked very hard for transparency in city matters, and I believe that all matters that concern the city need to be open and transparent to all residents. So vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bates.
Well, how soon we forget those who have made the way for us. How many of you remember that little old shack was here as a recreation center? How many of you remember we had no shopping center? You had to go all the way to Safeways. Who do you think led the fight to get food go here? Who do you think led the fight to bring in this beautiful building? You had gravel out there on the sidewalk. Nat Bates and others, we put in a beautiful park. You had no basketball court. We worked with Chevron to bring in a basketball court. How soon we forget the people who paved the way. If you don't know your history, you got no future. I've been a part of this community from 1967. Shields Reed, Mr. Reed, worked with him. Lily Mae Jones, a host of them. I continue to work for you and be your servant. Thank you very much.
Ms. Thompson.
Okay, I sat on the committees that fought for this park to be renovated, fought for this park to be cleaned up, along with some of the people who are here today. We were people that was going fighting to get this park renovated and cleaned up, because we had a lot of drug dealers here, and it finally did get cleaned up. Thankful for that. And when I was thinking about the homeless, there's another thing that I thought about. The young man who's the mayor of Stockton, what he did, he gave the homeless jobs so that they could clean up around their camps. And to get them housing, and he gave them tents and things so that they could clean up around their own places. I'm just trying to find my notes here. I might find it before it's over. Okay, in working with the youth, I received a life skill from Officer David Sage to work with young men who hung out on the streets.
Thank you. Mr. Zepeda.
So this November, I hope that I am able to earn your vote by the work that I have done in the community. I have been able to earn the endorsements of several people. In this room in particular, we have two of your neighborhood council presidents who've endorsed me. We have Marina Brown and Ms. Doria Mason. Along with them, we have the Sierra Club, the California Democratic Party. We have Senator Kevin De Leon, Controller Betty Yee, the Building Trades, Equality California. The list of endorsements goes on because they believe in me and they have seen the work that I have done. I have never gone out to the community to say, give me your vote. I have earned it because I have worked alongside with you, picking up trash, picking up our communities to be where we want them to be. So when you go out this November to vote, please remember, I am number 1 on the ballot. Thank you so much.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, once again, my name is Nicholas Johnson III, and that's third on the ballot for those of you who are wondering. And I'm a fourth generation Richmond resident, born at Brookside, raised right across the street, played right in this center here. I'm also a community worker at Richmond High School, and I'm the chair of the Economic Development Commission, and I'm on the Citizens Police Review Commission. We've heard calls for homegrown teachers. We've heard calls for homegrown police officers. But we missed that third most important homegrown person that we need, and that's homegrown leadership. Right now, the city of Richmond is at a critical juncture in our history, and in order to move forward, we need forward-thinking individuals that know our history, respect our nuances, and are here for the future. No disrespect to those who have experiences, but we would have been there already. Now it's time for something new. So let's do something new, Richmond. Let's be bold. Let's move Richmond forward. Nicholas Johnson III, third on the ballot. Thank you.
Ms. Virginia, call me Vicky Ramirez.
Thank you, everyone, for having us this evening. My main 3 issues that I would focus, if elected, would be defending immigration rights, maintaining the welfare of the city, and housing. There's this unrealistic and unreachable rates to be able to put a stable roof over our heads. Yes, let's build more affordable housing, but that takes time, even many years, and our renters need stability right now. Housing is a really crucial part of our lives, and it determines whether you wake up and go happy, you're happy and not stressed to go to work, or whether you have 2 jobs. And I think we need to change the way we look at housing. It shouldn't be a form of oppression for many of us, and that's why I support Prop 10, because Prop 10 repeals Costa-Hawkins, which allows cities to enact rent control and just rent control to apartments built after 1995 and single-family homes that we are not able to do right now. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia.
I've been living in Richmond most of my life, 40 years. I grew up in Easter Hill, South Side. I went to Helms Middle School, at that time it was junior high, and I went to most of the high schools and got kicked out. Living in Richmond was hard. 26 of my homies got killed. I grew up as a gangbanger. But I tell you this, because of community leaders like Marcos Gonzalez, Fred Jackson, who ignite that light in me to become a community leader and to pay it forward. What I'm asking you guys on November 3rd is to be able to understand that you have to elect community homegrown leaders. For 23 years, I've been on the streets making sure that we can get these kids to a better place. January 1st, everyone thinks about a new resolution. A week later, they forget about it. The candidates can give you what they can do. They can tell you what they're going to do. But remember, we're creatures of habits. We only do what we are trained to do. 23 years of experience.
Thank you. And set the record straight, we're actually going to vote on November 6th, not the 3rd.
Sorry.
At least you didn't say the 7th. Ms. Johnson.
Okay, I want to again thank everybody for coming, and although I'm not a Richmond native, I have been living here for 22 years, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I love the diversity and the potential here, but if you want a candidate who has already been active in the community for the past 11 years, active with the Racial Justice Coalition, Safe Return Project, working to help formerly incarcerated people, and on Richmond's Homeless Task Force, just to name a few. Then when I'm elected, I will continue to do that and so much more. I will be a stronger advocate for protecting our environment and strengthening our economy. So please vote for me November 6th.
Mr. Pinplay.
So thank you all again. The most important role of a city council member is to oversee a budget. $168 million. Whom do you have the confidence to do that? The East Bay Times said that I was a standout, the most financially astute member. The California Democratic Party endorsed me because they were confident that I can balance fiscal responsibility with the need for services, because they know that I really study the details to figure out what is most important, what are the things where we need to allocate our resources. Those of you who attend your neighborhood council regularly know that in my 2 years on city council, I visited the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Council 4 times. And I've gone to every other neighborhood council in the area. So if you want someone who's caring, someone who's competent, and someone who listens to you, I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
I want to thank all the candidates. Before we close, I've got a quick little story to tell you all. You say, why bother to vote? My vote doesn't matter. I want you to take you back close to 100 years now, when there was an amendment put before the people to allow women to vote. Constitutional amendment. Okay? A lot of people don't understand the process. The first step, it had to go to the House of Representatives, where it requires a 2/3 majority to pass. It passed by 1 vote, where it was then sent to the United States Senate, where again it required 2/3 majority to pass. It passed by 1 vote. It then has to go to the states, where 75% of the states have to approve it. It's down to the last state, Tennessee. Now, these old guys, they wore a red carnation if they were against women's suffrage. They wore a yellow carnation if they were for it. One guy, he got a telegram from his mama. He walked in, he took off his red carnation, he put on his yellow, and it passed by 1 vote. Sooner or later, we all know that women would have gotten the right to vote, but how many years, how many decades might it have taken? 1 vote matters. Every vote matters. Many of you have already received your ballots in the mail. You can vote by mail. Almost 2/3 of the people in West County vote by mail. Those are not. That's going to be, make sure that you show up by November 6th and deposit your ballot. You can go down to City Hall and drop off your vote by mail for free. Save yourself the 60-something cents of postage, whatever it costs nowadays. Okay? But, now, last little thing. It's very important to understand, nothing ever just happens. Somebody has to make it happen. This forum could not have happened if it had not been for the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Council and my associates here to my left, Oscar Garcia and Lisa Johnson. But even more, take a look, you got 12 people up there. They gave up a lot of nights, they've given up a lot of days, they're walking. It is tougher than you might think to be on that side of the table. And some of them are actually going to get elected. That's when the work really begins. So they deserve a big round of applause. I hope you join me in saying thank you for volunteering to even try. And with that, let's go stuff some ballot boxes. Thank you.
And if you don't have a stamp, you can actually put it in the mailbox and it will be delivered.
Did not know that.